Welcome to Tuesday's Tips from So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and let's talk about cutting straight fabric using a rotary cutter, rulers, and mats. There are so many rulers out on the market. Different companies, different sizes. A lot of times we need to use more than one ruler for a project. Always check the measurements against each other so that you know that the 1 inch on one ruler is the same 1 inch on the other. The measurements are normally the same. However, the lines can throw you off one way or another if you're not aware of the markings on the rulers. So laying the rulers on top of one another will give you a better idea where the markings are. So you'll be able to cut in the same area on both rulers. Some of the rulers are marked with just a solid line. Other rulers will have a solid line with a little break in that area. You can get them in black lines, pink lines, green lines. They're all different colors. The center of that line is the mark. So in this case, if you're using a ruler that has that space that you can see in between, to have that exact mark, the fabric would line right up to that center dark line. When you have a ruler with a solid line, you shouldn't see any fabric sticking out on the one side or sticking out on the other. The true mark is the center of that line. The same is going to go for these smaller marks. Your smaller dashes are going to represent 1/4 inches and 1/8 inches and sometimes even 1/16. Your first larger line represents your inch marks. Oftentimes you're going to have a secondary mark, which is your 1/2 inch marks. So I'm going to go from that nothing to a 1/2 inch to an inch. This particular ruler just has solid lines for each of the 1/4 inch marks and the darker line for your inch marks. This ruler is marked in the same manner as the darker line is your inch line. Then from there, they have your 1/4 inch marks, but in between, they also have your little 1/8 marks. Some rulers stop and start at 1 inch marks. Other rulers will have 1/2 inches or 1/4 inches along the one side. You can also get a tape that marks the rulers. It comes in a package of 3 and it's called glow line tape. I use it all the time. You have your 3 different colors, so depending on what fabric you're going to use, you'll be able to choose your color. It's not a tape that's going to stick things together. It's a very gentle tape that will go on top of the ruler or underneath the ruler to mark the line that you want to cut. You can mark the ruler first, and it's going to save you time from having to count those lines every single time. And it just comes off very easily. I like to put my tape on the bottom. It gives it just a very small lip that I'm going to be able to use as a guide. You can also mark the area that you don't want to cut into by just putting some lines of tape or an X. So there's no mistaking, this is not the side I want to cut. I want to cut this side, and I'm going to use that edge inside as the marking. Now I won't have to count every single line. I'm just going to be able to place that ruler on, slide it up to that measurement, and trim it off. The tape cuts very easily with the rotary cutter, and it comes off and leaves no residue on either side of your rulers. Rotary cutters come in all shapes and all sizes, from very small to very large. Each has their own unique feature. How you hold the blade is also important. Because you need to put some pressure on the blade, you want to make sure your hand is in a comfortable position and it is going to put the weight in the right area. If you have that blade running very close along the bottom, you're not going to be able to get the pressure in this area to cut. They're not designed to grip and cut. They're designed to be guided. You should have a nice straight wrist. If I draw a straight line, that is the pressure that's going to be on that blade. So if my hand's like this, that straight line is coming here, not on that blade. That straight line is the pressure point. When it's time to cut your fabric, it's important that you start with your fabric with no folds, no wrinkles. If your fabric is laying flat, you're going to have nice straight lines when you're done. With your fabric pressed and the fold facing you, you now can cut. Oftentimes, we need to square up one side in order to square up the other. You can cut it and then turn your fabric or turn your mat, or you can use a 2-ruler system. The 2-ruler system can work with any 2 rulers. You can use 2 long rulers, a square, and a long ruler. The fold does not have to be pressed flat, but it needs to be laying flat. So just smooth it with your hands. This fold line needs to match a straight line on any secondary ruler. It doesn't matter what line you use, you just need one of those straight lines. Without moving this, I'm going to take that second long ruler and I'm going to have it butt right up against this edge, making sure that this line is straight and this ruler is right up against it. I can now remove that secondary ruler and I can now cut that edge. I'm going to keep that rotary cutter in a nice straight position in my hand, and I'm also going to keep the blade straight. The blade needs to run straight along the edge. You don't need to go into an angle on one side or another. That straight blade will run along the straight edge. Hold the ruler down and start cutting. Keep the cutter in the fabric with the pressure down. Move your hand. And then you can move your hand again. By moving your hand, you're going to prevent the ruler from moving as you cut. If you're holding in one area, it's very easy for that ruler to move. Once your first cut is done, all the rest of the cuts are going to go straight. From there, I can continue to cut my strips. I'm going to use this fold line as a guide and the last cut line. Cut a little bit, keeping that blade nice and straight. If you find that you're cutting and your blade comes off and you're going on top of the ruler, it could be that the blade is not sharp and you're having to force it. By forcing it, it's easy to get over that little lip and to cut into your ruler. The sharper the blade, the easier it is to cut without making errors, because we don't have to put as much pressure. As you're cutting your strips, and it doesn't matter how wide they are, always check that that bottom fold is straight along one of the markings on the ruler. As you cut a couple of strips, you're going to notice you will need to re-straighten up that edge. With every cut, a straight line must be along the fold. If not, you will end up with an elbow. And even though this piece was cut straight, we have this little bit of a bend right there where that fold. So now if you were to sew these strips together, all of your strips would be bent. So the key things to remember is the position of the cutting mat, having a nice sharp blade, holding the cutter at a proper angle so you have that proper pressure at the proper area, and making sure that you follow that fold if you're using a fold. Thank you for joining me today on Tuesday's Tips. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.